क्या है आज? मंडे, मतलब हर रोज कुछ ना कुछ डे होगा ही। मुश्किल है फिर तो। फाइन। सो एनी डाउट फ्रॉम द लास्ट क्लासेस? Allogenic biotic factors means internal factors, any species in that particular area, right? Allogenic succession, it's not allogenic. In allogenic, you are saying, okay, so fine, fine, fine. So let me discuss that. Let me discuss. So we are discussing about environment and ecology. And under that, we are discussing about the functions of ecosystem, जिसमें हम discuss कर रहे थे ecological succession. Ecological succession. ठीक है? How we defined it? What is ecological succession? It is right. It is the change in species diversity, or it is the change in community, right? Wherein one community, one set of community is replaced by another. That is called as ecological succession. Right? See, I give you the example of, let's say, the playground where you used to play in the childhood. But आज अगर आप वहाँ पे जाओगे तो it might not be the case कि वो playground वैसे का वैसा है. It might be the case बहुत ज़्यादा trees वहाँ पे आ गए, कुछ छोटे animals आ गए, insects आ गए, birds आ गए, like that, right? So that would be considered as ecological succession. हाँ. वो इसीलिए मैंने उस वहाँ पे एक कंडीशन अप्लाई की थी कि वहाँ उस ओपन एरिया में देयर शुड नॉट बी एनी कंस्ट्रक्शन. जहाँ पे आप लोग लेट्स से बचपन में खेलते थे, कंस्ट्रक्शन नहीं होना चाहिए, तभी वो इकोलॉजिकल सक्सेशन की डेफिनेशन को फुलफिल करे, राइट? सो दैट वी हैव डिस्कस्ड. अंडर दिस वी टॉक्ड अबाउट पायनियर स्पीशीज. What are pioneer species? Those species that initiate, those species that initiate ecological succession are pioneer. Then we talked about climax community, right? Climax community is the community. It is the set of species where we can see ecological succession reaching its stability, right? But that stability, is it permanent? No, that stability is not permanent. It may be altered because of the external or internal factors, right? So climax community term we referred to. Then we referred to seral. Seral means any intermediate stage in ecological succession is seral. Then sere, sere is entire sequence of change in ecological succession is sere, right? Then we talked about types of ecological succession, जिसमें हमने रेफर किया था प्राइमरी एंड सेकेंडरी, राइट? प्राइमरी एंड सेकेंडरी. So what is primary ecological succession? Which starts from that ecosystem which does not have any life earlier, right? Barren ecosystem में जब ये start होता है, barren region में जब ये start होता है, उसे कहेंगे primary. And then secondary is that ecological succession where earlier some life was there in a region and that life got destructed because of different factors. अगर वहाँ पे फिर से life start hoti hai, that would be called as secondary ecological succession. Then we refer to autogenic and allogenic. Autogenic means, right? Autogenic means internal factors, right? And that's why it is often biotic factors. It is induced by biotic factors. It is allogenic is induced by external factors, which can be abiotic, which can be biotic, right? Abiotic factors can be, for example, वहाँ पे कोई meteor shower हो गया, right? That would be considered as abiotic factor. What can be biotic factor in allogenic? Human interfere, right? एक ecosystem है, वहाँ पे human beings ने pollution कर दिया. We let's say introduce some chemicals which are forever chemicals, which will remain in that particular area for perpetuity, right? So that would be considered as biotic factor, ठीक है. Then we also refer to Zerarch and Hydrarch succession, right? Zerarch and Hydrarch. Zerarch succession is that, see, now here it can be primary, it can be secondary, it can be autogenic, it can be allogenic. That is not the criteria that would differentiate Zerarch or Hydrarch. What is the criteria that would differentiate Zerarch and Hydrarch is kahan pe ho raha. Zerarch starts in areas where we have drier conditions, desert में हो सकता है, and Hydrarch कहाँ पे हो सकता है, wet conditions में, and they eventually lead to establishment of mesic habitat where conditions are neither too dry nor too wet, right? So that we have referred to. We also refer to one term called as niche, ecological niche. What is ecological niche? It is the functional role of an organism. And if we are talking about the functional role of an organism, we will also be able to understand the criteria for the species to survive in that particular area, right? अगर उसे कोई function carry out करना है, it won't be able to carry out that function if there are, let's say, lack of resources for that particular function. उस function के लिए जो भी resources चाहिए होंगे, उन resources की availability वहाँ पे होनी चाहिए. And that's why we can say that niche not only tells us about the function, it also tells us about the position where in the environment this particular species would be occurring. Clear hai, samajh mein aa raha hai, right? Now, can two species have same niche? No, no. In a particular habitat, two species cannot have same niche. If niche is common in a particular region, in a particular habitat, then there would be competition, right? So that point we have referred to. Now, one more point that you should understand. See, niche cannot be same in a habitat. Can it be same in different habitats? It can be. It can be, right? In different habitats, अगर मान लेते दो species है, species A, species B, they are living in different habitats. Can they have same niche? Yes. Okay. Habitat is different in that case. Fine. So that is what is the point that we have discussed in the last class. Clear है? ठीक है. यहाँ पे कोई doubt? Bioaccumulation. Bioaccumulation. See, bioaccumulation मतलब किसी भी organism में, suppose a particular organism is living in its environment, right? For example, इस environment में हम लोग रह रहे हैं, दिल्ली में हम लोग रह रहे हैं. So it may be the case that contaminants, let's say some kind of let's say gaseous chemicals which are present in the form of gases. So those chemicals are entering in our body, right? Now, as they are entering in our body, we can consider that they may get excreted from our body eventually, but the rate of excretion is lesser than the rate of accumulation. तो उसके वजह से क्या होगा, जो भी contaminants है वो हमारे body में बढ़ते रहेंगे, their concentration will go on increasing, and that is what we call as bioaccumulation, right? Simply put, bioaccumulation is increase in the concentration of contaminants because of time, and that's why we can say that bioaccumulation is a function of time. क्यों होता है वो accumulation? Because of time, right? So that is what is an important point. Bioaccumulation is increase in the concentration of contaminants due to the result of time, and biomagnification on the other hand, biomagnification is also increased in the concentration of contaminant, but it happens over the transfer of contaminant over food chain, and that's why we can say that it is a function of trophic level या food chain. That's why we can call it as a function of trophic level. Clear है? Fine. Online student का doubt था ये. I hope it is clear. Harsh and Dhruv. एक बार autogenic, allogenic. I hope it is clear. Aditi. इसका हिंदी meaning. See, it is a term. Even in Hindi, it would be ecological niche only. इसका term ecological niche ही होगा. मीनिंग अगर आप पूछ रहे हो, मीनिंग मतलब किस प्रकार का कार्य उस स्पीशीज को वहां पे करना है, दैट वुड बी कंसिडर्ड एज इकोलॉजिकल निश. उसका कार्य, उसका फंक्शन क्या है, वो इकोलॉजिकल निश होता है. ठीक है. Fine. So that is what are the doubts. हाँ, इकोलॉजिकल निश आप लेट आए क्या? Ecological niche. See, niche means, ecological niche means functional role of a species. Functional role of a species, right? For example, coral polyps का functional role है to form coral reefs, right? Coral polyps का क्या functional role है? To form coral reefs, right? Now, if that is the functional role of coral polyps, that they have to form coral reefs eventually, can they do that in a fresh water? Can they do that in that kind of water where we do not have presence of, let's say, salinity, where we do not have presence of calcium carbonate? No, right? उनका रोल क्या है? फॉर एग्जाम्पल polyps, coral polyps, their role is to build coral reef. Coral reefs को बनाना उनका रोल है, and that's why we can say that it is their ecological niche. Now, if this is their function, can we say that it also helps us understand that coral reefs would be seen in saline water, right? Coral reefs would be seen in saline water. So, functional role हमें इसकी location की idea दे रहा है, right? So, it basically tells us about the functional role. But from that functional role, we will also be able to understand what are the criteria required for the survival of that particular species. And hence, we can say that ecological niche of coral reefs, coral polyps is to build coral reefs, and that's why they should be there in saline water. That's why they should be there in, let's say, shallow waters. क्यों? क्योंकि उनको एक association भी form करना पड़ेगा to continue their survival. Right? ये सारी आइडिया हमें किसके वजह से मिल रहे हैं? उनके निश के वजह से मिल रहे हैं. And that's why basically it is a functional role of a particular species, which also helps us understand the criteria of that particular species, the role of that particular species in a particular environment. Are you able to understand this point? हाँ, clear है? निश, ठीक? Any other doubt? राधे राधे. अगेन आप फिर से लेट आए शायद. Autogenic is that ecological succession which is triggered by internal factor. Auto means self factor, internal factors would trigger that ecological succession, right? And those self factors are biotic in nature, right? यहाँ पे allogenic succession में the factors that trigger ecological succession are external, fine. Those external can be abiotic, can be biotic components. Any doubt? Any other? Shall we proceed? हाँ, हाँ, इकोटोन अभी आए नहीं, हम करेंगे डिस्कस. We'll be discussing about it. There will be some terms that we will refer to. One of them is ecotone. Clear? Next now. So that was our third function. Fourth function is homeostasis. Homeostasis. Could you please provide us notes as well? Notes. So these are notes only, right? Whatever we are discussing, whatever I am writing on this digital board is a form of notes only. So why to provide separate notes? अगर मैंने दे भी दिए, वो किसी कोने में पढ़े रहेंगे, आपके लैपटॉप में पढ़े रहेंगे, मोबाइल में पढ़े रहेंगे, उनको पढ़ा नहीं जाए. What you generally read, what we generally read is that which we have written with our hands. So इसीलिए ये notes पे rely कीजिए. बाकी printed notes are not very let's say important from my point. Ocean acidification बता दीजिए. कितने doubts पूछ रहे हो आप लोग आज? Aditi, fine, no problem, fine. See, what is ocean acidification? ocean acidification. It is increase in, sorry, not increase, decrease, right? Should be decrease, right? Decrease in the pH value of sea or ocean water due to addition of what? Of excessive CO2, which results in the formation of what? Which results in the formation of carbonic acid, that is H2CO. इस प्रोसेस को हम कहते हैं ओशन एसिडिफिकेशन. This occurs, this is right now occurring because we human beings are adding excessive CO2 in the atmosphere, right? When we burn fossil fuels, when we carry out various activities, we are adding excessive CO2 in the atmosphere. It ultimately gets dissolved in sea and ocean water, thereby reacting with water to form H2CO3, that is carbonic acid. इसके वजह से क्या होता है? It has negative impact on, it harms कोरल पॉलिप्स. स्पेशली कोरल पॉलिप्स को वो हार्म करता है. क्यों? क्योंकि इनको चाहिए होता है कैल्शियम कार्बोनेट, जो इन्हें नहीं मिल पाता है इफ ओशन एसिडिफिकेशन इज. ठीक है, विच वी हैव ऑलरेडी टॉक्ड अबाउट. वो रिएक्शंस हमने डिस्कस की थी अबाउट ओशन एसिडिफिकेशंस इम्पैक्ट ऑन कोरल. आई होप इट इज क्लियर नाउ. Grazing and detritus food chain. Grazing food chain and detritus food. So grazing food chain, not food. Grazing food chain में first trophic level will be occupied by producers, and in this detritus food chain, first trophic level would be occupied by detritus matter, dead organic matter. Not that consumers would be there or detrivores would be there. It is dead organic matter that occupy first trophic level here in detritus food chain. Example हमने देखा था, इसका example simple है, grasses, फिर ग्रास हॉपर्स, वो एग्जाम्पल. ठीक है, दैट एग्जाम्पल. then here you can add example like, let's say, dead organic or fallen leaves. Fallen leaves are used by fungi are used by earthworms are used by birds, frog, whatever you want to write. ठीक है, that is what is detritus and grazing food chain. Grazing food chain में पहला level होगा producers का. This food chain is directly dependent upon sunlight. This detritus food chain is not directly dependent on sunlight, but indirectly obviously it would be depending on sunlight. Okay, ठीक है अनुराग. Zerarch is that area. Zerarch is that succession which starts in that area where we have drier conditions. Right, drier conditions may Zerarch succession start. Okay, I think that is clear now. Next, so next function is homeostasis. Okay, now see, this is one of the functions of ecosystem, but this function is not restricted to ecosystems only, right? ये एक function है ecosystem का, but it is not restricted to ecosystem. For example, we refer to human beings carrying out the activity of sweating and shivering. ठीक है, human beings carry out these two activities. Why? Because they have to make sure that the internal body temperature remains constant, right? Internal temperature 37 रखना है, इसीलिए sweating and shivering की activity carry out की. So what happens because of this? Because of these two activities, internal environment remains constant. ठीक है, internal environment remains constant. Fine. That is what is homeostasis. Right? That is what is homeostasis. Similarly, cells also carry out the activity of homeostasis, wherein they want to make sure that internal environment remains constant despite the changes occurring in external environment. ठीक है, so ऐसा same function ecosystem में भी occur होता है. Let me give you an example and then I'll define homeostasis. So हमने एक food chain देखी थी, आई एम राइटिंग इन शॉर्ट. ग्रासेस है, फिर ग्रास हॉपर्स है, फ्रॉग्स, स्नेक्स एंड ईगल्स या हॉक्स, वट एवर यू वांट. ठीक है, सो दैट फूड चेन वी रेफर्ड टू. नाउ ड्यूरिंग COVID-19, you remember in the initial phase of COVID-19 we have had in northern parts of India locust attack. याद है क्या? Right? Locust attack was seen in the northern parts of India, right? उसके वजह से what is locust? Locust is nothing but a type of grasshoppers, right? They are nothing but a type of grasshoppers. So इसके वजह से क्या हुआ? Locust attack के वजह से there was excessive increase in the number of grasshoppers, right? Grasshoppers का number excessively increase हो गया. But despite the increase in the number of grasshoppers, number of grasses was same, right? Grasses की संख्या नहीं बढ़ी थी. What increase was grasshoppers because of locust attack, right? So excessive number of those grasshoppers would be feeding on the limited number of grasses. Fine. Eventually what will happen? Eventually there will be a situation where grasses will not be available for the increased number of grasshoppers, right? There would be competition amongst grasshoppers to get the limited grasses that are available in that area. And that's why eventually what will happen? Obviously only few of these grasshoppers would be able to get food in the form of grasses, right? बाकी के क्या हो जाएंगे? They won't be able to get food and that's why they will eventually die. They will not extinct, right? Species extinct नहीं हो रही, कुछ individuals मर रहे हैं, right? If species dies altogether, then we can say that it is extinction. पर यहाँ पे सिर्फ कुछ individuals मर रहे हैं. And that's why we will be calling it as a death of, let's say, certain individuals, right? So इसके वजह से क्या होगा? If certain individuals are dying, obviously we will be able to make sure that eventually earlier condition is restored, right? So this kind of self-regulation in an ecosystem is called as homeostasis. यहाँ पे ये restoration करने में, ये जो ecosystem restore हो गई है, has it been restored because of any external influence? No. Internally only ecosystem carried out some functions which allowed it to make sure that the earlier conditions are restored. That we call as homeostasis, right? Homeostasis means the ability of an ecosystem to maintain constant internal environment despite the changes occurring in external environment through self-regulation. It is the state of equilibrium achieved based on self-regulation. That is what is homeostasis. Clear hai? Fine. So let me define it. What is homeostasis? An ability of an ecosystem, to maintain a state of equilibrium, based on self-regulation. That would be considered as homeostasis. Okay, so it is one of the functions that ecosystem carries out, homeostasis. इसके कारण क्या होगा? Ecosystem का अपना internal environment constant रहे. ठीक है, one statement I am writing, can you please tell me whether it is correct or not? Homeostatic ability, don't write, homeostatic ability of any ecosystem, of any ecosystem is finite. Is it correct? Homeostatic ability of an ecosystem, of any ecosystem, is finite. Is it correct? How many for yes? How many for no? This statement is incorrect, right? As per you, this statement is incorrect. Why? Is it the case that homeostatic ability is infinite? आप लोग ऐसा सोच रहे हो कि homeostatic ability infinite है? No, this statement is correct. Why? Because if we do not have, if we let's say that this statement is incorrect, then we can say that there should not be any environmental degradation in the nature, right? There should not be any environmental degradation in nature, right? But do we see environmental degradation in nature, right? That means homeostatic ability has its limits, right? Even for, I told you that homeostasis is not only related to ecosystem, it is also related to animals. So ऐसा है क्या कि हम किसी भी environment में, किसी भी temperature condition में sweating और shivering की वजह से रह पाएंगे? Right? We also have our temperature limits. Okay? So this statement is correct, that homeostatic ability is finite. If homeostatic ability is infinite, there should not be any environmental degradation. But we often come across environmental degradation. That's why this statement is correct. Right? किसके वजह से हो सकता है? Homeostatic ability can be breached. Now you can write down this statement. You can write down this statement. Homeostatic ability can be breached by natural and human interferences. By interference. ठीक है, नेचुरल और ह्यूमन इंटरफेरेंस के वजह से होम्योस्टैटिक एबिलिटी क्या हो सकती है? ब्रीच हो सकती है, और उसके वजह से हमें एनवायरमेंटल डिग्रेडेशन देखने को मिल सकता है. नेचुरल फैक्टर्स कैन बी एनी नेचुरल फैक्टर, इट मे बी ड्रॉट, इट मे बी फ्लड्स, इट मे बी मीटियोर शॉवर, कुछ भी हो सकता है. एनी नेचुरल फैक्टर may lead to disturbances in the homeostatic ability. Right? What can be human factors? What can be human factors? डिफॉरेस्टेशन हो सकता है, एक्सेसिव पोल्यूशन हो सकता है, क्लाइमेट चेंज हो सकता है, राइट? एनीथिंग, any human action which is harming nature can be considered as that activity which is breaching homeostatic ability. ठीक है, क्लियर है? फाइन. एक एग्जांपल लिखिए, एक एग्जांपल. नेचुरली आई टोल्ड यू दैट, फॉर एग्जांपल, अगर बहुत ज़्यादा फ्लड्स आ गए किसी रीजन, that will have a negative impact on the ecosystem. It won't be able to maintain its equilibrium. Right? कोई भी disaster, natural disaster, right? That would have, even earthquake, right? For example, आप floods के लिए कह सकते हो कि यार human intervention involved है आज के तारीख में. Why? Because climate induced disaster it is, flood. But earthquake, is it related to human beings? No. Are we playing any role in earthquakes? No. Right? And that's why we can say that natural factors like earthquake can have impact. So एक पॉइंट लिखेंगे प्लीज अंडर दैट. हाँ, एग्जाम्पल. इट हेल्प्स, it helps maintain, it helps maintain the balance of nutrients in nature, the balance of nutrients in nature. For example, plants and animals use nutrients, plants and animals use nutrients in excessive amount, in excessive amount due to their rising population, due to their rising population. Next point or sub point. They would die eventually. They would die eventually and would add dead organic matter to soil. Dead organic matter to soil. Next sub point. It would be decomposed by decomposers. It would be decomposed by decomposers to release back nutrients. To release back nutrients. ठीक है? So that is what is homeostasis. हाँ हाँ लिख लीजिए, सेकेंड वाली लाइन भी लिख, सेकेंड वाली लाइन भी क्लियर है? फाइन. So these are some important functions that you should be aware of that we have in ecosystem. चार functions हमने discuss किए, कौन से? First, nutrient cycles. Second, energy flow. Third, ecological succession. And fourth is this. Fine. Next now. Clear है? इसमें कुछ doubt है? Next now. Some other functions in ecosystem. Now these are given in NCERT and that's why we are discussing these as well. पहला है decomposition. पहला है decomposition. Under that, it is a process in which dead organic matter is reduced in the form of nutrients, water and CO2 by decomposers. Right? It is a process in which dead organic matter is reduced in the form of nutrients, water and CO2 would be released from that process of decomposition. Okay, which gas is released from the process of decomposition? CO2. Next point. The raw material for decomposition is detritus. Right? Dead organic matter को हम क्या कहते हैं? Detritus. Raw material for decomposition is detritus. ठीक है? Then next point. The rate of decomposition is determined by two factors. कौन से factors है? Sorry, which two factors? Climatic conditions. First is climatic conditions. Rate of decomposition is determined by two factors. First is climatic condition. इस climatic condition में decomposition की process faster होगी वार्म एंड वेट कंडीशंस में फास्ट होगा या ड्राई एंड कोल्ड कंडीशन में, right? So in warm and wet conditions, the rate of decomposition would be more than the dry and cold environment. Okay, so climatic conditions, warm and wet, higher rate, and in dry and cold conditions, slower. Okay, why so? Why in warm and wet conditions we have more rate of decomposition? Right. See, decomposition is a process carried out by living organisms, decomposers. They are living organisms. So, for their own growth, they need certain temperature range, and that would be in this particular area where we have warm conditions. And in wet conditions, we will be able to say that their growth is faster because of the availability of water or humidity in the atmosphere. एटमॉस्फेयर में अगर ह्यूमिडिटी होगी तो उनका ग्रोथ फास्टर होगा, एंड इन वार्मर एनवायरमेंट ऑल्सो देयर रेट ऑफ ग्रोथ वुड बी फास्टर. सेम सिंपल, फॉर एग्जांपल इस सीजन में, दैट मीन्स इन कोल्डर सीजन, is it possible for us to get curd very easily? No, setting of curd is a faster reaction during summer season, not this season. Fine. So curd is also set by bacteria. Decomposition is also carried out by various organisms, including bacteria, and that's why we can say that warm and wet condition we have higher rate of decomposition. Clear hai? First. Second factor is type of detritus matter. What is the raw material for decomposition? Detritus, right? Raw material for decomposition is detritus. इस detritus में, ये detritus किन nutrients का बना हुआ है, which chemicals are present in this detritus would also determine the rate of decomposition, right? For example, detritus rich in lignin and chitin, like lignin and chitin, will have slower decomposition, ठीक है. I hope you are aware of these terms. Lignin सुना है? Lignin, chitin, fine. So what is lignin? It is a polymer present in plant tissues. Plant tissues में एक polymer होता है, because of which plants and their different parts get rigidity. लिग्नाइन के वजह से प्लांट्स के डिफरेंट पार्ट्स को क्या मिलती है? रिजिडिटी मिलती है. फॉर एग्जांपल सीड कोट, राइट? मैंगो सीड, ऑब्वियसली यू मस्ट हैव सीन मैंगो सीड. तो मैंगो सीड का जो कोट होता है, इट इज वेरी टफ, राइट? व्हाई? बिकॉज इट इज मेड अप ऑफ लिग्नाइन, राइट? ये लिग्नाइन क्या है? एक पॉलीमर है. पॉलीमर मतलब चेन, राइट? इट इज ए चेन ऑफ डिफरेंट मॉलिक्यूल्स की चेन बनाकर हमें लिग्नाइन मिलता है, राइट? तो अगर लिग्नाइन इज ए पॉलीमर, विल इट नीड मोर टाइम फॉर द प्रोसेस ऑफ डिकम्पोजिशन? ऑब्वियसली यस. क्यों? क्योंकि उस लिग्नाइन के चेन को ब्रेक करना पड़ेगा. ब्रेक करने के बाद उसकी प्रोसेस स्टार्ट होगी डिकम्पोजिशन, एंड दैट्स व्हाई दैट रेट ऑफ डिकम्पोजिशन इंक्रीजेस बिकॉज ऑफ दिस पॉलीमर, राइट? अगर डेट्रिटस में लिग्नाइन होगा तो प्रोसेस ऑफ डिकम्पोजिशन वुड बी slower, it would need more time. ठीक है. Now what is chitin? chitin क्या होता है? गलती से कभी कॉकरोच के ऊपर पैर पड़ा है? जानबूझ के भी क्या है, राइट? फाइन, नो प्रॉब्लम. सो that surface of cockroach, right, the upper surface of cockroach is relatively hard, right? It is relatively tough. That toughness is because of one polysaccharide called as chitin. Right? Chitin क्या है? I am writing on next page. Chitin is a polysaccharide. What is polysaccharide? Saccharide means sugar, right? Saccharide means sugar. Poly means many. Many molecules of sugar will form polysaccharide. One of the examples of polysaccharide is chitin, right? Chitin क्या है? एक polysaccharide है. Similar, see, it is a chain only. Polymer ही है, पर किसका polymer है? Sugar का, and that's why it has a typical name called as polysaccharides, right? Polysaccharide means chain of sugar molecules. Fine. ये कहाँ पे देखने को मिलता है हमें? दो जगहों पे. तो first is cell wall of fungi. Cell wall of fungi are made up of chitin, and second is covering of arthropods, right? Arthropods की कवरिंग मतलब इंसेक्ट्स, कॉकरोच की कवरिंग किसकी बनी होती है? काइटिन की बनी. फाइन. आर्थ्रोपोड्स मीन्स व्हाट? आर्थ्रोपोड्स मतलब देयर इज ए फाइलम कॉल्ड एज आर्थ्रोपोडा, राइट? जो एक किंगडम है एनिमालिया, right? Classification of living organisms is there. 5 kingdoms are there. Will not be going into those things. 5 kingdom है. एक है किंगडम एनिमालिया जिसमें हम लोग भी आते हैं, ह्यूमन बींग्स भी आते हैं, राइट? उस किंगडम एनिमालिया में बहुत ज्यादा फाइलम्स है, बहुत सारे फाइलम्स है. वन ऑफ द फाइलम इज फाइलम आर्थ्रोपोडा. उसमें जो इंसेक्ट्स के एग्जाम्पल है उनकी कवरिंग में हमें क्या देखने को मिलता है? काइटिन देखने को. ठीक है. So if detritus is rich in lignin and chitin, the process of decomposition would be slower. Clear? Fine. Any doubt in this? So there are two factors that determine the process, the rate of process of decomposition. First is climatic factor and second is composition of detritus matter या type of detritus matter. Clear है? Next now. Next point. नेक्स्ट एग्जाम्पल, इसी सेकंड पॉइंट में ही नेक्स्ट एग्जाम्पल जो आप टाइप ऑफ डेट्रिटस में लिख रहे हो उसी को कंटिन्यू कीजिए. इफ डेट्रिटस इज रिच इन नाइट्रोजनस कंपाउंड्स and sugar molecules, in bracket you can write monosaccharides, rate would be higher, rate of decomposition would be. अगर detritus में नाइट्रोजनस कंपाउंड्स है या शुगर मॉलिक्यूल्स है तो उस प्रोसेस ऑफ डिकम्पोजिशन का रेट क्या होगा? फास्टर. क्लियर? ठीक है. तो these two factors are important when we say that the rate of decomposition is determined by climatic conditions and type of detritus matter. Any doubt in this? Am I correct in saying like crabs and lobsters shell are they chitin? crabs का आप बोल सकते हो. lobsters, not sure about lobsters. Crabs is true. Neha, crabs is true. Clear? Next now. Next, we are in the decomposition only. Next subheading, steps in decomposition. Steps in the process of decomposition. Decomposition की process में कौन से steps आते हैं? So that's why I asked you to write monosaccharide. Mono means single, poly means chain, right? अगर एक single sugar molecule है तो उसे break करने में ज़्यादा time नहीं लगेगा, right? उसे decompose करने में ज़्यादा time नहीं लगेगा. पर अगर chain है, right, उस chain को पहले break करना पड़ेगा and then the process of decomposition would start, right? So it would act as, this sugar molecule is a source of food, right? Detritus is a source of food for decomposers. When they are acting on detritus matter, when decomposers are acting on detritus matter, they are not doing charity. वो अपना food तलाश रहे उसमें, right? And that food is in the form of sugar molecule, it is in the form of nitrogenous compounds. So when they act on that detritus matter, अगर उन्हें directly sugar molecule मिला तो प्रोसेस फास्टर होगी. अगर चेन ऑफ शुगर मॉलिक्यूल्स मिले तो उन चेन्स को पहले ब्रेक करना पड़ेगा. सो उनका काम बढ़ रहा है और उस काम के वजह से द रेट ऑफ डिकम्पोजिशन इज गेटिंग स्लोअर. ठीक है. No, no. See, whatever energy is there in the sugar molecule, they will get. It is not that वो जो chemical bond की energy वो harness करेंगे. That energy, see, whenever process of decomposition occur, temperature would also increase. Right? Temperature would also increase. Why? Because the bonds are getting broken. ठीक है. वो chemical energy derive करेंगे. ये जो heat energy है वो derive नहीं करेंगे. Right? Clear? Next now, steps in decomposition. Now this was one of the let's say questions that UPSC has asked. Not directly, obviously UPSC directly question nahi पूछेगी, but what you were supposed to write is this one. So first, अगर मान लेते detritus matter nature में गिरा हुआ है, which process it will undergo? The process of decomposition. इन stages में ये process होती है, that we will be trying to understand. First stage होगी fragmentation. First stage क्या होगी? Fragmentation. What will happen in fragmentation? Detritus matter would be broken up physically. Detritus matter would be broken up physically. Physical breakdown होता है detritus matter का इस step, fragmentation की step. Fine. Second is leaching. Leaching. What happens in leaching? Right. Water soluble inorganic nutrients are taken to the deeper layers of soil by water. राइट. इस प्रोसेस में लीचिंग में क्या होगा, इस स्टेप में क्या होगा, जो भी वाटर सोल्यूबल इनऑर्गेनिक न्यूट्रिएंट्स है, दे विल डिसॉल्व इन वाटर, एंड एज वाटर फ्लोज टुवर्ड्स द ग्राउंड एरिया, टुवर्ड्स द ग्राउंड वाटर, those nutrients would also be taken to the deeper layers of soil. Fine. So इस प्रोसेस में कौन से न्यूट्रिएंट्स लीच हो रहे हैं? इनऑर्गेनिक न्यूट्रिएंट्स. एग्जांपल कैल्शियम, मैग्नीशियम, sodium, etc. ठीक है. Calcium, magnesium, sodium, etc. will be leached in this particular process. Right? सुना ये नाम leaching? In which area, in which region of the world the process of leaching happens? Right? It occurs mostly in equatorial region. Equatorial region में ये leaching की process होती है. क्यों? Because it rains throughout the year in equatorial region. अगर बहुत ज़्यादा बारिश उस रीजन में हो रही है, ऑब्वियसली उस एरिया में वाटर अवेलेबिलिटी ज़्यादा होगी एंड इट विल टेक न्यूट्रिएंट्स टुवर्ड्स द ग्राउंड एरियाज विथ इट. फाइन. एंड दैट्स व्हाई द प्रोसेस ऑफ लीचिंग इज सीन इन इक्वेटोरियल रीजन एंड इवन इन ट्रॉपिकल रीजन. फॉर एग्जांपल इन स्टेट्स लाइक केरला वी हैव द प्रोसेस ऑफ लीचिंग. जो कोस्टल एरियाज है जहाँ पे बहुत ज़्यादा बारिश होती है, वहाँ पे क्या देखने को मिलता है? लीचिंग. ठीक है. सो first is fragmentation, second is leaching. Third is catabolism. Catabolism. Here organic compounds are broken down into their simpler forms. Here, organic compounds are broken down into their simpler forms. For example, proteins. उस डेट्रिटस मैटर में प्रोटीन हो सकता है क्या? ऑब्वियसली yes. वो किस में ब्रेक होगा? अमाइनो एसिड्स में. उसमें फैट्स हो सकते हैं क्या? दे वुड बी ब्रोकन डाउन इनटू फैटी एसिड्स. उसमें कार्ब्स हो सकते हैं क्या? दे वुड बी ब्रोकन डाउन इनटू शुगर मॉलिक्यूल्स. ठीक है. सो दैट इज व्हाट इज द प्रोसेस ऑफ कैटाबॉलिज्म. राइट. कैटाबॉलिज्म इज रिवर्स ऑफ मेटाबॉलिज्म. कैटाबॉलिज्म इज रिवर्स ऑफ मेटाबॉलिज्म. ठीक है. फॉर एग्जांपल, हमारे बॉडी में वी कैन कंसीडर दैट respiration is catabolism. Right. Respiration is catabolism. What is respiration? What is respiration? No, that is breathing. That is breathing. Taking gases in and exerting gases out, or let's say giving gases out, is breathing. I am asking about respiration. Right. Respiration is the process in which energy would be produced. Respiration में energy produce होती है. Right. And the activity of breathing is a part and parcel of respiration. Respiration में क्या produce होता है? Energy. And what is the source of energy for us? Food. जो food होता है that is basically in the form of C6H12O6. आप जो भी मर्जी खाओ, it would be converted into C6H12O6 in our body. Right. That food C6H12O6 acts as a source of energy for us. तो उसे ब्रेक डाउन करने की प्रोसेस होती है रेस्पिरेशन. C6H12O6, that means glucose, is broken down in the process of respiration. और उस प्रोसेस में अल्टीमेटली क्या रिलीज होता है? ATP molecules. ATP molecules which is a currency of energy. Right. जो हम यूज करेंगे that is ATP. So that ATP is released during the process of respiration. Right. So क्या हो रहा है? Try to understand in simple terms. Try to understand. ये food है. It is broken down into, let's say, ATP. Right. It is broken down into ATP. So क्या हो रहा है? A larger compound is getting broken down into smaller compound. That is catabolism. ठीक है. On the other hand, for example, अगर smaller compounds build होके एक larger compound बनता है तो उसे क्या कहते हैं हम लोग? Metabolism. Clear? So it is as simple as that. अगर किसी larger compound का breakdown होके smaller compounds बन रहे उस process को हम catabolism. So that process of catabolism is occurring in the process of decomposition, and this is what is the source of energy for decomposers. ये है energy. Amino acids एक energy का source है. Fatty acids, sugars are source of energy for decomposers. ठीक है. So they are interested in, decomposers are interested in these sources of energy. Clear, everyone? These three processes occur simultaneously. These three processes occur simultaneously. ये साथ में चलती है तीनों प्रोसेस. He or she requires more energy. Obviously, higher metabolism मतलब see basically metabolism is let's say basal metabolism. आप अगर रेस्ट में भी हो तो भी आपको कुछ एनर्जी चाहिए. So that's what is basal metabolism. Clear है? Fine. Next now, but decomposition does not stop here. Decomposition does not stop here. The next process is humification. नेक्स्ट स्टेप क्या है डिकम्पोजिशन में? ह्यूमिफिकेशन. ठीक है. सो व्हाट हैपेंस इन ह्यूमिफिकेशन? ए डार्क colored amorphous substance called humus gets accumulated. राइट. ह्यूमिफिकेशन में क्या होता है? एक डार्क कलर्ड अमॉर्फस सब्सटेंस कॉल्ड ह्यूमस गेट्स एक्यूमुलेटेड. इट further undergoes degradation. It further undergoes degradation, but the rate is quite slow. Fine. So जो डिकम्पोजिशन हो रहा है उस डेट्रिटस मैटर का, उसका नेक्स्ट स्टेप है ह्यूमिफिकेशन, जिसमें हमें क्या देखने को मिलता है? दैट डेट्रिटस मैटर इज गेटिंग कन्वर्टेड इनटू डार्क कलर्ड amorphous substance. Dark color means it is very let's say dark in color. This is often seen during rainy season, right? Rainy season में अगर आप जो let's say पेड़ है उनका अगर नीचे वाला हिस्सा देखेंगे, उनका जो जमीन से लगा हुआ हिस्सा है वो देखेंगे, यू विल बी एबल टू सी डार्कनेस इन दैट पर्टिकुलर एरिया. ज्यादा डार्क देखने को मिलता है देन द नॉर्मल लेट्स से टाइम्स. वो क्या है? वो है ह्यूमस. राइट. इट इज डार्क कलर, डार्क इन कलर. अमॉर्फस मीन्स इट डज नॉट हैव एनी डेफिनाइट शेप. उसका शेप प्रॉपर नहीं होगा, डिफाइन नहीं होगा, कुछ भी शेप में वो हो सकता है. And that's why we call it dark colored amorphous substance like humus. ठीक है. Fine. So what is getting formed in humification? Humus. Does it further undergo the process of decomposition? ऐसा statement आ सकता है. Humus does not undergo the process of further decomposition. Is it correct? No. Right. हमें लगता है कि वो humus आगे decomposition undergo नहीं कर रहा, but it does undergo the process of decomposition. Problem is that it undergoes the process very slowly. Fine. Next and final step is mineralization. Bacterial action would further decompose humus, thereby releasing nutrients, CO2 and water. Thereby releasing nutrients, CO2 and water. In bracket nutrients के examples लिखिए. Examples: NO3 minus, that is nitrates, SO4 3 minus, that is sulfate, PO4 3 minus, that is phosphate. Right. नाइट्रेट, सल्फेट और फॉस्फेट इन फॉर्म में न्यूट्रिएंट्स रिलीज होते हैं ड्यूरिंग द प्रोसेस ऑफ मिनरलाइजेशन, एंड दैट एंड्स द प्रोसेस ऑफ डिकम्पोजिशन. ठीक है. ये 5 स्टेप्स ऑकर होते हैं डिकम्पोजिशन. एनी डाउट इन दिस? एनी डाउट इन दिस? एनी डाउट प्लीज आस्क. आया है समझ में? नहीं आया? एनी डाउट? क्या? हाँ ना, कुछ तो बोलिए। तो ऐसा बोलना है नहीं, ऐसा देख रहे हो आप मेरे पास? सो राइट डाउन वन क्वेश्चन, पी वाई क्यू। पी वाई क्यू, every year, every year, lots of cellulose matter, lots of cellulose matter fall on the earth's surface, fall on the earth's surface. Stop and continue. Discuss, discuss the processes through which it will undergo, discuss processes through which it will undergo before getting converted into, before getting converted into CO2, water and nutrients. CO2, water and nutrients. Full stop. 10 marks. 10 marks. ठीक है, 150 वर्ड्स में आपको ये आंसर लिखना है। ये क्वेश्चन था 2022 का, 2022 या 21 मेंस में ये क्वेश्चन पूछा है। जस्ट कंफर्म कर लेना 21 का है या 22। ठीक है, सो राइट डाउन दिस आंसर, वी विल बी डिस्कसिंग टुमारो। आपको ज़्यादा फोकस किस प्रोसेस पे रखना है? डिकम्पोज। पर व्हेन यू राइट आंसर, थिंक, right? You should not, your main focus will be on decomposition. You should not restrict yourself to decomposition, right? That is a hint for writing your answer. और जितना हो सके अपने आप से लिखना, फिर चैट जीपीटी को प्रॉम्प्ट देना है और फिर उसने जो आंसर लिखा है वो देखना। ठीक है, पहले ही प्रॉम्प्ट दे देते हो और फिर सोचने की एबिलिटी ही खत्म हो गई। डू नॉट डू दैट। हमें भी सोचना है, बिकॉज एग्जाम में तो सोचना ही पड़ेगा। देयर इज नो चैट जीपीटी इन द एग्जाम। So make sure you write answer on your own, and then you can, let's say, get good answer, get updated answer from ChatGPT. Humification. What is humification? Humification is the further degradation of detritus matter to form. इसमें एक डार्क कलर सब्सटेंस फॉर्म होता है जिसको हम ह्यूमस कहते हैं। It is that substance which does not undergo the process of decomposition fastly. It has, let's say, it is a storage of nutrients. It is dark colored amorphous substance, but it does undergo the process of decomposition further. That is what is humification. True. Fine. Next now. Next and second other function may can write productivity. So this is the last topic that is related to NCERTs. इसके बाद NCERTs का रेफरेंस बहुत कम आएगा। प्रोडक्टिविटी, हाँ, अदर फंक्शन में सेकंड, अदर फंक्शन में फर्स्ट था डिकम्पोजिशन, सेकंड है प्रोडक्टिविटी। Fine. Now, what is productivity? The rate of production of food या biomass. The rate of production of food या biomass is called as productivity. ठीक है? Now, why we are referring to these two terms, food and biomass, separately? Because this process, this let's say this function of productivity is associated with both producers as well as consumers. Consumers, do they produce food? Do they produce food? What they produce is biomass, right? हम लोग जब खाना खाते हैं तब हम लोग और ज़्यादा फूड नहीं प्रोड्यूस करते, राइट? अगर वैसी फैसिलिटी होती तो अलग बात थी, राइट? सो वॉट एवर वी कंज्यूम, वी यूज इट फॉर द प्रोडक्शन ऑफ बायोमास। बायोमास मतलब क्या? मे बी आर मसल मास, मे बी फैट, मे बी सेल्स, एक्सेट्रा एक्सेट्रा. सो जो भी हम लोग बिल्ड करते हैं so that we are able to grow in our life is biomass. So productivity is not only related to the production of food, which is often the function of producers, it is also related to biomass, and that's why we can classify productivity as or in two types. So two types of productivity. First is primary productivity. First is primary productivity. Right? पहली जो प्रोडक्टिविटी है उसे हम क्या कहते हैं? प्राइमरी प्रोडक्टिविटी. रिलेटेड विथ, कैन यू प्लीज टेल मी? राइट, it is related with producers, and process in which this function is carried out is photosynthesis. Is photosynthesis in which primary productivity is carried out. So how we can define it? How we can define it? It is the rate of production of biomass in the form of food, by producers during photosynthesis. ठीक है. So what it is? It is the rate of production of biomass in the form of food, and obviously who carries out it? Producers during the process of photosynthesis. ठीक है. That is what is a primary productivity. Now this primary productivity is further classified into two. First is gross primary productivity, abbreviated as GPP, and net primary productivity, abbreviated as NPP. Gross primary productivity and net primary productivity. PP क्या है? Primary productivity. PP is primary productivity. So primary productivity is further classified as gross primary productivity and net primary productivity. So बहुत ज़्यादा इकोनॉमी से रिलेटेड टर्म्स लग रही है? नहीं. एक, what is GPP, gross primary productivity? It is the total biomass produced during photosynthesis. Right? It is the total biomass produced by producers during the activity of photosynthesis. Fine. So total biomass को हम क्या कहते हैं? Gross primary productivity. It is very similar to total tax collection. Right? It is very similar to total tax collection. Right? So total tax collection is the entire amount of let's say money that government is able to collect from tax. But is it the case that all that money government would be able to use? No, because while collecting some tax, they must have incurred some expenditure, right? तो उस expenditure को आपको जो total tax collected है उससे minus करना पड़ेगा in order to get net tax collected, right? Which can be used by government on various activities. Same. Biomass in the form of food. I have written in short here, right? Because here we have written in detail कि biomass कौन से form में है? Food के form में. Now ये जो biomass produce किया गया है producers द्वारा, is it the case that entire biomass is available for the use of consumers? No. Plants also have their needs related to growth and development. So a major part of that biomass would be used by them, producers, for their own growth and development. That type of, that mass, that let's say amount of biomass we call as रेस्पिरेशनल लॉस। जो बायोमास प्लांट्स अपने यूज के लिए यूज करते हैं, अपने ग्रोथ के लिए यूज करते हैं, उस बायोमास को हम क्या कहते हैं? रेस्पिरेशनल लॉस, राइट? सो when you subtract respirational loss denoted by letter R, what you get? You get net primary productivity, right? So what is net primary productivity? It is the biomass available for the consumers, for the let's say growth and development of consumers, which we can get by subtracting respirational loss of biomass from the total amount of biomass that is produced by producers, right? I repeat, थोड़ा सा क्वेश्चन मार्क आ रहा है आपके चेहरे पे. I repeat, फॉर एग्जाम्पल, लेट्स टेक एन एग्जाम्पल. ये जो बायोमास है वो कंसिडर करते हैं 100 ग्राम्स पर स्क्वायर मीटर. एक स्क्वायर मीटर में जो भी प्रोड्यूसर्स है उन्होंने कितना बायोमास प्रोड्यूस किया? 100. पर ये पूरा का पूरा वो किसी लेट्स से गोट को दे सकता है क्या? नो, ऑब्वियसली देयर वुड बी ए मेजर पार्ट ऑफ दैट which would be used by plant itself for its own growth and development. मान लेते हैं प्लांट ने 100 में से 60 ग्राम्स ऑफ बायोमास यूज कर लिया इसके लिए, अपने खुद की डेवलपमेंट के लिए. उसे हम क्या कहते हैं? रेस्पिरेशनल लॉस. लेट अस डिनोट इट विथ लेटर आर. नाउ if you want to find out NPP, what is the formula? Formula is GPP minus R. या इस केस में GPP कितना है? 100. R कितना है? 60. What you will get? 40 grams per square meter, right? That would be your NPP, net primary productivity. And this is that biomass which is available for that goat to use. उस गोट को कितना बायोमास देगा वो प्लांट? इतना. फिर वो गोट वो बायोमास यूज करेगा and that biomass would be used by goat to form its own muscles, cells, blood, etc. इस मसल को, सेल को, ब्लड को हम बायोमास कह सकते हैं? Yes or no? We have discussed biomass is a living matter. Muscle, cell, blood, is it a living matter of that goat? Yes, and that's why it is also a biomass. But when we define secondary productivity, I'll use term formed, not produced. Why? Because production is associated with producers, and that's why when we define secondary productivity, we define it as the rate of formation of biomass by consumers. Okay, so coming back to this, primary productivity clear hai. Gross primary productivity means the total biomass produced by plants. What is net primary productivity? Amount of biomass available for the utilization of consumers. So you can write the definition. ये formula लिख दीजिए, ये formula लिख लीजिए. I'll write the definition now. It is the amount of biomass. It is the amount of biomass available for the utilization of consumers. Clear hai? So that is primary productivity in the form of GPP and NPP. Clear? Next now. So two types hai. Pehla hai primary productivity. Now second is secondary productivity. Secondary productivity. How we can define it? It is the rate of biomass. It is the rate of formation of biomass. It is the rate of formation. Underline this term. Formation of biomass by consumers. It is the rate of formation of biomass by consumers. ठीक है, फाइन फाइन. So and when we say consumers, we are not restricting ourselves to any specific consumer. It can be primary, it can be secondary, it can be tertiary. Okay. So it is the rate of formation of biomass by consumers. Fine, clear hai? Last point. Last point. Productivity is productivity of an ecosystem is dependent upon two factors. First is conditions of an ecosystem with respect to climate, availability of nutrients, etc. ठीक है. Productivity of an ecosystem is dependent upon conditions of that ecosystem. कौन सी conditions? Climatic conditions, availability of nutrients in that particular area. It would determine the productivity of an ecosystem. Yes or no? Yes or no? Productivity. What is productivity? It is the rate of production of biomass, right? It is the rate of production of biomass. Fine. Now, cactus की productivity ज़्यादा होगी या let's say trees like let's say walnut, balsam, इनकी productivity ज़्यादा होगी. वॉलनट बाल्सम की ज़्यादा होगी. क्यों? क्योंकि कैक्टस हमें देखने को मिलता है मोर ऑफन देन नॉट इन डेजर्ट एरिया. डेजर्ट एरिया में क्लाइमेटिक कंडीशंस आर हार्श, राइट, एंड दैट्स व्हाई द प्रोडक्टिविटी ऑफ कैक्टस वुड बी लेसर than the productivity of let's say walnut, balsam, like that. ठीक है. So climatic conditions and nutrient availability will determine productivity. Second and very important, type of the species. Type of the species also will determine productivity. ठीक है. And that's why often जब हम कोई फॉरेस्ट डाइवर्ट करते हैं फॉर एनी नॉन फॉरेस्ट एक्टिविटी और उस फॉरेस्ट के जगह पे जब हम किसी दूसरे एरिया में एफॉरेस्टेशन करते हैं तो we won't be able to get the services that we were able to get from forest earlier. क्यों? क्योंकि फॉरेस्ट में there were number of tree species. राइट. फॉरेस्ट जब आप विजुअलाइज करते हो ऐसा नहीं है कि लाइन से एक ही स्पीशीज के प्लांट्स आपको दिख रहे. नो, देयर वुड बी डिफरेंट स्पीशीज ऑफ प्लांट्स दैट वुड बी ग्रोइंग इन फॉरेस्ट. ठीक है. तो जब हम इस फॉरेस्ट को डाइवर्ट करते हैं फॉर एनी नॉन फॉरेस्ट यूज एंड व्हेन वी कैरी आउट afforestation of any alternate land in the compensation of this land will not be able to give us the services that forest was giving us. Right, and that's why often we criticize diversion of forest. क्यों? क्योंकि forest has forest ecosystem as a result of which we get those services. Forest is not only about trees, it is also about the carbon sequestration that is being carried out. It is also about the habitat that it provides to different species. पर उस प्रकार की सर्विसेज आपको इस लैंड में देखने को नहीं मिलेगी. क्यों? कि एफॉरेस्टेशन ऑफन एक ही स्पीशीज का होता है लाइन्स. राइट. आपने देखा होगा फॉर एग्जांपल इन उत्तराखंड वी हैव फॉरेस्ट ऑफ चीर पाइन. वी हैव लेट्स से लैंड ऑफ चीर पाइन. दैट इज नॉट नेचुरल फॉरेस्ट, दैट इज प्लांटेड फॉरेस्ट. ठीक है. इसी वजह से एक लाइन से आपको ट्रीज देखने को मिलती है चीर पाइन. फाइन. सो वेन एवर वी टेक इन टू अकाउंट प्रोडक्टिविटी you have to consider two factors to determine the productivity of that area. एक है conditions, उस area की conditions in terms of climate and availability of nutrients, and secondly उस area में किस प्रकार की species available है. And that's why productivity of different regions is different. Last subheading of ecosystem topic, productivity of different ecosystems. And this is exam worthy point. ये dictate करूंगा मैं point. Please write down. Productivity of different ecosystems. Under that, first is tropical rainforest. Tropical rainforest. They have highest productivity. They have highest productivity due to favorable conditions of climate. Favorable conditions of climate. Next, इसी में next, even in these areas, different types of species are available. Even in these areas, different types of species are available. As a result of which, they have highest productivity across the globe. ठीक है, तो पहला क्या है? रेन फॉरेस्ट. कितनी प्रोडक्टिविटी है? हाईएस्ट. मतलब कितनी? Write down the number. 2200 grams per meter square per year. Second is coral reefs. Coral reefs. What we call coral reefs? Right? We have referred to this term. Coral reef ecosystem is also referred as rainforest of ocean. तो रेन फॉरेस्ट की प्रोडक्टिविटी सबसे ज्यादा है ऑन लैंड, सबसे ज्यादा पानी में कोरल रीफ्स की प्रोडक्टिविटी है, एंड दैट इज दिस मच, 2000 ग्राम पर मीटर स्क्वायर पर ईयर. ठीक है. नेक्स्ट इज एस्चुरीज. एस्चुरीज की कितनी है प्रोडक्टिविटी? 1800 ग्राम्स पर मीटर स्क्वायर पर ईयर. नेक्स्ट, टेम्परेट फॉरेस्ट. So their productivity is 1200. Temperate forest productivity is 1200. Next is grasslands. Now ये सारे जो इकोसिस्टम्स हैं हमें पढ़ने हैं सेपरेटली. Right? Just write down productivity. We are just referring to their productivity. What are the features of these different ecosystems? We will be discussing separately. Grasslands की productivity है 700 to 800. Grasslands की productivity है 700 to 800. Next, sixth is lakes and rivers. Their productivity is 300 to 500 grams per meter square per year. Next is desert. It is 50 to 50 to 20, 200, 50 to 200. Next is open oceans. It is 125. And last is tundra. It is around 100. It is around 100. Okay. So there are some deserts which are more productive than open oceans and tundra. Fine. Tundra. Must have heard about this name. What is tundra? In which latitudes we have presence of tundra? Don't worry, that is what we are going to discuss further. Clear hai? There might be a question wherein they may ask you to arrange different ecosystems based upon their productivity. ऐसा क्वेश्चन पूछा है उन्होंने, it may get repeated as well. Right? So remember this, that rainforest, coral reefs have one of the highest productivity, and open oceans. Open oceans, what are open oceans? खुला समंदर. What are open oceans? Suppose this is land. Suppose this is land, and from land you are moving towards water. So जब भी पानी की तरफ मूव होते हैं हम लोग from land, it is not that immediately ऐसा कुछ let's say ऐसी boundary आती है जहाँ से एकदम से you will be able to see deeper waters. It gradually increases. More often than not, it might be the case. कुछ जगहों पे ऐसा direct fall होगा, पर generally it is like this. Right? Generally it is like this. So this area, this shallow area which is related to continental shelf is called as neritic zone. इस जोन को क्या कहते हैं हम? नेरेटिक जोन. कौन सा जोन है ये? जोन ऑफ कॉन्टिनेंटल शेल्फ. ठीक है. उसके बाद वी हैव इवन डीपर वाटर्स. दोज डीपर वाटर्स वी कॉल एज ओपन ओशंस. ठीक है. तो ओपन ओशंस में प्रोडक्टिविटी कम है. क्यों? Why productivity is lesser in open oceans? Because what is the source of nutrients for seas and oceans? Sunlight. I repeat. सुनिए पहले. Don't shoot answer. थोड़ा प्रोसेसिंग के लिए भी टाइम दीजिए. चैट जीपीटी को जब आप प्रॉम्प्ट देते हो, इमीडिएटली थोड़ी ना आंसर देता है. इट ऑल्सो थिंक्स, कभी कभी आता है थिंकिंग करके. Right? देखा है थिंकिंग करके. So that is also the process that AI carries out. So that also you should carry out. सोचिए, what is the source of nutrients for water bodies like seas and oceans? Is land. Land is a source of nutrients for seas and oceans. ठीक है. लैंड के कांटेक्ट में ये वाटर है या ये वाटर है? Right? And that's why availability of nutrients is more here, but the availability of nutrients is lesser. I'm not saying nutrients are absent. Availability of nutrients is lesser here. Fine. Nutrient एक condition है क्या productivity determine करने की? है. ठीक है. One more point. Why open oceans are let's say they have lesser productivity. Open oceans में depth कितनी होती है? Average depth. It is 4000 meters, right? 4000 meters तक डेप्थ हमें देखने को मिलती है, एवरेज डेप्थ. इट कैन बी इवन मोर. एवरेज इज 4000. ठीक है. पर इस 4000 मीटर के एवरेज डेप्थ तक पूरे नीचे तक सनलाइट होता है क्या? नो. इट इज अवेलेबल ओनली इन द सरफेस. सरफेस पे सिर्फ 200 मीटर तक हमें क्या देखने को मिलता है? सनलाइट. अदर एरिया इज एफोटिक. अगर एफोटिक है, विल देयर बी एनी प्रोडक्टिविटी एसोसिएटेड विथ प्रोड्यूसर्स? नो. राइट. अगर प्रोड्यूसर्स की प्रोडक्टिविटी कम है या प्रोडक्टिविटी हमें देखने को नहीं मिल रहे हैं वहां पे विथ रिस्पेक्ट टू प्रोड्यूसर्स, ऑब्वियसली वॉट एवर कंज्यूमर्स आर देयर इन दिस पर्टिकुलर aphotic area will be dependent on the photic area. aquatic एरिया से जो भी खाना मिल रहा है उसके ऊपर यहाँ पे जो भी कंज्यूमर्स है वो जी रहे होंगे। तो यहाँ पे बहुत ज़्यादा कंज्यूमर्स होंगे क्या? नहीं। वाई? बिकॉज देर आर नो प्रोड्यूसर्स। तो यहाँ पे कंज्यूमर्स की भी कमतरता होगी एंड दैट्स वाई वी विल बी हैविंग लेसर प्रोडक्टिविटी इन दिस एरिया इवन एसोसिएटेड विद कंज्यूमर्स। राइट, प्रोडक्टिविटी जो कंज्यूमर से रिलेटेड है वो भी कम होगी। क्यों? क्योंकि यहाँ पे यूजर्स ही। क्लियर? एंड दैट्स व्हाई we have lesser productivity in open oceans. Open oceans means those waters which are away from the coastal areas. Coastal areas से दूर जो पानी होता है उसे open oceans कहते हैं. And then tundra. So remember these terms, remember these two terms, you will be able to solve the answer. ठीक है? So that is what is productivity. With this we have completed our discussion of ecosystem. If you have any doubt, please ask. आंसर चेक करवाना है. आई हैव टू आस्क कि ऑनलाइन स्टूडेंट्स का कैसे आंसर ये करना है. नॉट श्योर, लेट मी आस्क. ओशन प्रोड्यूस मोर एनपीपी देन सरफेस प्लांट्स. ओशन प्रोड्यूस मोर एनपीपी देन सरफेस प्लांट्स. तो प्लांट्स, ऑब्वियसली प्लांट्स ज़्यादा होंगे, राइट. ओपन ओशंस आप देखिए इतना कम. Secondary productivity unable to understand. So see, fine, let me explain secondary productivity once more. Let me explain secondary productivity. Primary productivity and secondary productivity. See, simple hai, it is related to plants, it is related to plants, it is related to consumers. Okay. Now what is primary productivity? It is the rate of production of biomass. It is the rate of production of biomass by plants during the activity of photosynthesis. And as they are carrying out the activity of photosynthesis, what do they produce? Food. Right? What do they produce? Food. Now, ये जो food है, that is in the form of biomass only. Right? That food is in the form of biomass. इस food का major part plants यूज करेंगे फॉर देयर ओन ग्रोथ. ठीक है, उसे हम कहते हैं रेस्पिरेशनल लॉस. तो इस प्राइमरी प्रोडक्टिविटी से जो भी रेस्पिरेशनल लॉस है वो आपको माइनस करना पड़ेगा टू अराइव एट एनपीपी, अनदर टर्म, नेट प्राइमरी प्रोडक्टिविटी. इट इज दैट बायोमास which can be used by consumers. So consumers will be using एनपीपी. कंज्यूमर्स क्या यूज करते हैं? नेट प्राइमरी प्रोडक्टिविटी वाला बायोमास यूज करते हैं. Now using this biomass, consumers will also grow in their life. That growth happens because of formation of biomass, not production of biomass. Consumers also form their own biomass. So the rate at which they are forming their biomass is called as secondary. Right? The term that, see, सिर्फ इतना डिफ्रेंशिएट कीजिए कि जब भी आप डेफिनेशन लिखेंगे प्राइमरी प्रोडक्टिविटी की तो लिखिए प्रोडक्शन ऑफ बायोमास, और सेकेंडरी प्रोडक्टिविटी के लिए क्या लिखेंगे? फॉर्मेशन ऑफ. दैट इज व्हाट इज द एस्पेक्ट दैट यू शुड रिमेंबर. अदरवाइज इट इज वेरी सिंपल. इट इज द प्रोसेस इन विच बायोमास इज प्रोड्यूस. किस रेट पे हो रहा है वो होगा प्रोडक्टिविटी. ठीक है, आई होप इट इज क्लियर टू यू. क्लियर है? एनी डाउट इन दिस? सो जिन्हें लगता था कि ये सब्जेक्ट बहुत ज़्यादा बायोलॉजी से रिलेटेड है, बायोलॉजी से रिलेटेड डिस्कशन अभी खत्म. नाउ एक्चुअल एनवायरमेंट एंड इकोलॉजी विल बी स्टार्टेड. सो जिनको भी बायोलॉजी से डर लग रहा था, सो प्लीज डोंट वरी. नाउ ऑनवर्ड्स वी विल नॉट बी रेफरिंग टू एनीथिंग रिलेटेड टू बायोलॉजी. ठीक है, ऑब्वियसली इट इज इंपॉर्टेंट. क्वेश्चंस हैव बीन आस्क्ड. क्वेश्चन, मैंने ऐसा नहीं कहा कि इंपॉर्टेंट नहीं है, मैंने ऐसा कहा कि बायोलॉजी से रिलेटेड जो चीजें हैं वो अभी खत्म. इंपॉर्टेंट है, राइट. क्वेश्चंस हैव बीन आस्क्ड. 2 क्वेश्चंस मेंस में पूछे गए, जो कैरिंग कैपेसिटी और ये वाला क्वेश्चन, दोनों मेंस के क्वेश्चंस, राइट. एंड वंस वी कंप्लीट आवर डिस्कशन ऑफ फर्स्ट चैप्टर, वी विल डिस्कस अबाउट द प्रीलिम्स क्वेश्चंस एज वेल. ठीक है, प्रीलिम्स के क्वेश्चन में जो पूरा डिस्कशन होगा एनवायरमेंटल इकोलॉजी का, वो कंप्लीट होने के बाद करूँगा. सो आई विल बी टेलिंग यू कि टुमारो वी विल बी डिस्कसिंग क्वेश्चंस. तो आपको रिवाइज करना है so that you will be able to connect with the questions that we will be discussing. So that is what is ecosystem. Next now, I hope it is clear, online students. Next, and the most important part in levels of ecological organization is biomes. Biomes. ठीक है, अगर लास्ट लेग ऑफ रिवीजन कर रहे हो आप लोग, एग्जाम के टाइम लास्ट लेग ऑफ रिवीजन करेंगे, तो इस चैप्टर में से दो चीजों को रिवाइज करके जाना है, एक है इकोसिस्टम और दूसरा होगा बायोम्स। दो टॉपिक्स को रिवाइज करना है इस चैप्टर। सो व्हाट आर बायोम्स? राइट, नाउ अगेन इट इज ए लेवल ऑफ इकोलॉजिकल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन। इंडिविजुअल के लेवल में हमने टाइगर के बारे में देखा, पॉपुलेशन में हमने टाइगर्स को इन्वॉल्व किया, कम्युनिटी में हमने टाइगर्स, डियर्स, ग्रासेस एक्सेट्रा को इन्वॉल्व किया, इकोसिस्टम में हमने एबायोटिक कंपोनेंट और बायोटिक कंपोनेंट्स को इन्वॉल्व किया अलोंग विथ देयर इंटरैक्शन। ठीक है, सो इफ यू सी एट एवरी लेवल देयर इज इंक्रीज इन द स्कोप। स्कोप हर एक लेवल में बढ़ रहा है। ठीक है, यहाँ पे ज्यादा इंडिविजुअल्स इन्वॉल्व किए पॉपुलेशन में, यहाँ पे ज्यादा स्पीशीज इन्वॉल्व किए कम्युनिटी लेवल पे, और इकोसिस्टम लेवल पे हमने क्या किया, नॉट ओनली बायोटिक बट ऑल्सो एबायोटिक कंपोनेंट्स वी इनकॉर्पोरेट। ठीक है, एनवायरमेंट में और कोई कंपोनेंट बचा है जो आप इनकॉर्पोरेट करोगे नेक्स्ट लेवल पे, बायोम्स की लेवल पे? Is there any other component that you will be able to incorporate to increase the scope now? Solas? Anything that you will be able to incorporate now? No. Right? Sare components, biotic, abiotic and interaction you have incorporated. So how we can say that even in the case of biomes, scope is increasing? It increases in terms of area. राइट, स्कोप यहां पे भी बढ़ रहा है बट इट इंक्रीजेस इन टर्म्स ऑफ एरिया। सिंपली पुट, बायोम क्या है? इट इज ए ग्रुप ऑफ डिफरेंट इकोसिस्टम्स। बहुत ज्यादा इकोसिस्टम्स मिलके क्या फॉर्म करते हैं? बायोम्स फॉर्म। एंड दैट्स व्हाई वी कैन से दैट हियर आल्सो स्कोप इज इंक्रीजिंग, बट दैट्स इंक्रीज इन द स्कोप इज इन टर्म्स ऑफ एरिया। फाइन। So how we can define biomes? How we can define biomes? It is a larger ecological unit. It is a larger ecological unit. What it is? It is a larger ecological unit compared to ecosystem. Characterized by a type of vegetation and associated fauna, which is influenced by climatic conditions and edaphic factors. Is influenced by climatic conditions and edaphic factors. ठीक है, फाइन। सो व्हाट इज बायोम? Biome एक larger ecological unit which will be having number of ecosystems within it, right? But this is not the entire, let's say, feature of biome that it is larger than ecosystem. It has a specific kind of vegetation. In biome we will be having a specific kind of vegetation, right? For example, when we talk about coniferous forest, we see cone shaped trees, right? वहां पे क्या होती है? cone shaped trees होती है. When we talk about deciduous forest, we will be able to see such plants which shed their leaves during drier season, right? So biomes का characteristic कौन determine करता है? Vegetation. And often, as their characteristic is defined by vegetation that they have, often they are named after that type of vegetation. Often they are named after that type of vegetation. For example, grassland biome. क्या है ज़्यादा वहाँ पे? Grasses, and that's why grassland. A type of forest called as coniferous forest, a type of forest called as deciduous forest. All these names are because of the characteristic of vegetation that that particular biome has. Fine. So they are characterized by vegetation, but that does not mean they do not have the presence of animals. Animals are also there, but animals are not the defining characteristic of biome. What is the defining characteristic of biome? Vegetation. Okay. So that is an important point. Vegetation is their defining characteristic. Fine. They means vegetation is influenced by certain factors. कौन से factors? Vegetation is influenced by climatic condition. Is it the case? And that's why we have a particular type of vegetation in equatorial region. That's why we have particular type of vegetation in desert. Right? Desert में हमें large trees देखने को मिलते हैं क्या? नहीं. Why? Because of the climatic condition. Right? And one more factor that determines vegetation is edaphic factor. मतलब soil. Edaphic factor मतलब soil. इस प्रकार की soil है उस area में, that would also determine the type of vegetation. Fine. Fine. So that is what is the definition of biome. It might be the case कभी कभी आपको ये definition में edaphic factor देखने को ना मिले, but that does not matter. Why? Because climate is that factor which also has its influence on soil. Yes or no? Soil पे climate का भी influence होता है, and that's why in certain cases you might not see this term edaphic factor mentioned explicitly. आपको वो consider करना है कि it is implicit in climatic condition. Clear? So that is what is the definition of biomes. Fine. Next. So we will firstly list different types of biome and then we'll start discussion of them one by one. So types of biomes. Very important point from the exams point of view. UPSC किस प्रकार के क्वेश्चन देता है इस पे? It comes up with an explanation. वो एक explanation देगा आपको और based on that explanation you'll have to find कि किस प्रकार का biome उस explanation से hint होता है, right? Explain features देंगे उस biome के and you'll have to identify that biome based on those features. So those kind of questions are often asked by UPSC. ठीक है? और दूसरे प्रकार का क्वेश्चन कैसा है? They will give you an example of plant species. Plant species देंगे for example साल, teak, और आपको आइडेंटिफाई करना पड़ेगा किस फॉरेस्ट के वो एग्जांपल्स, किस फॉरेस्ट बायोम के वो एग्जांपल्स. Right? That kind of questions are asked, and that's why you should be aware of features as well as plant species, animal species in that particular area. So types of biomes, first है tundra biome, second है desert biome, next is forest biome. Forest में सब types है which we will study there only. Then we have grassland biome, then we have savanna biome, and then we have Mediterranean biome. Write your own spelling. Mediterranean biome. Okay. So those are different types of biomes that we have. Okay. Let us study them one by one, starting with tundra. Then, so let us study them one by one, starting with tundra biome. See, when we say that biomes are influenced by climatic conditions, we are referring to two types of climatic conditions. कौन से? We are referring to two types of climatic conditions when we say that biomes are determined by climatic conditions. We are referring to sunlight and rainfall. Right? दो conditions को हम refer करते हैं sunlight and rainfall. ठीक है, so remember that. So let us discuss tundra biome one by one. Firstly, what are the conditions? इस एरिया में किस प्रकार की कंडीशंस हमें देखने को मिलते हैं, ऑब्वियसली इन द कॉन्टेक्स्ट ऑफ क्लाइमेट. सो हियर वी हैव डेफिसिट सनलाइट, ठीक है. टुंड्रा रीजन में हमें डेफिसिट सनलाइट देखने को मिलती है एंड डेफिसिट रेनफॉल. Here you can write precipitation because rainfall is precipitation is in the form of snow here. So here it's better to write precipitation. Deficit sunlight and deficit precipitation. ठीक है. Location 10 degree. So आप 10 डिग्री वहां से बोल रहे हो, so it's better to call it, better to say 70, 80, 90, whatever you want to say. So location, what is the location of tundra biome? There are two areas where we have presence of tundra. first है 70 degree to 80 degree north latitude, 70 to 80 degree north latitude, ठीक है. एंड दूसरी लोकेशन है second location is summits of mountains. Summits of mountains, peaks of mountains, whatever you want to write. Right? दो लोकेशन है 70 to 80 डिग्री नॉर्थ लैटिट्यूड और दूसरी है समिट्स. समिट्स मतलब जहां पे मिलते हैं, राइट. बहुत सारे माउंटेन जहां पे मिलते हैं. समिट मतलब क्या, राइट. इन इंग्लिश फॉर एग्जांपल आपने ब्रिक्स की समिट सुना होगा, राइट. क्वाड की समिट हुई है, मतलब क्या, वहां पे लोग मिल रहे हैं. सो समिट्स ऑफ माउंटेन मीन्स वेयर माउंटेन पीक्स मीट. उस एरिया में भी हमें टुंड्रा देखने को मिल सकता है. सो 70 to 80 डिग्री नॉर्थ में जो टुंड्रा है उसे हम कहते हैं आर्कटिक टुंड्रा. उसे क्या कहते हैं हम, आर्कटिक टुंड्रा. एंड wherever in the summits of mountains we have tundra kind of conditions, we call it alpine tundra. No, it's not only summits of mountains में जो टुंड्रा होता है उसे हम क्या कहते हैं, अल्पाइन टुंड्रा, राइट. सो आर्कटिक टुंड्रा, can you visualize arctic tundra which we have, let's say, in 70 to 80 degree north latitude where बहुत ज़्यादा snow है. We have animals like, let's say, polar bear, right? Can you visualize it, right? Can you visualize it? Snowfall है. What I want to convey some point. आप लोग बीच में आपका कुछ भी points दे देते हो. Wait, do not from, मेरा link टूट जाता है. Focus here, focus. So can you visualize arctic tundra where we have, let's say, snow bound areas, snow covered areas? Do we have that kind of region in India? Do we have that kind of region in India? Yes, obviously Kashmir mein, right, in Himalayan states we have that kind of area. Are we falling in this particular latitude? Obviously no. So that area which in the summits of mountain gives tundra kind of condition is called as alpine tundra. ठीक है. So we have these kind of locations for tundra. Clear? Fine. Next, Features. What kind of features do we have in tundra biome? One of the most important feature is permafrost subsurface. Permafrost subsurface मतलब क्या? Let us consider that this is a cross section of tundra region. ये क्रॉस सेक्शन है टुंड्रा रीजन का, ठीक है. तो टुंड्रा रीजन में हमने देखा कि इस एरिया में, इस लैटिट्यूडनल रेंज में टुंड्रा है. in this particular latitudinal range, is there absence of sunlight throughout the year? Obviously, right? Whenever you have studied world geography, you must be aware of a term called as apparent movement of sun towards north. Right, there is apparent movement of sun towards north. Due to apparent movement of sun towards north, even in these latitudes we will be having presence of sunlight, right? So जब भी northern hemisphere के लिए summer season होगा, इस एरिया में हमें सनलाइट देखने को मिलेगा. and that's why due to the availability of sunlight, ये जो upper layer है स्नो का, that would melt, and that's why we will have presence of, let's say, water in this particular area, right? But what about the rest of the surface? It will remain permanently frozen, and that's why we call it as permafrost subsurface. जो subsurface है, it is permanently frozen, ठीक है. So that is called as permafrost subsurface. Clear? Fine. Next feature is migratory adaptability. Migratory adaptability in animals. Migratory adaptability in animals. Migratory adaptability in animals. Animals in this particular area are living in harsh conditions, and that's why when winter season is there for northern hemisphere, animals क्या करेंगे? Migrate करेंगे. Fine. Next, availability of insects due to waterlogging. इस एरिया में we will be having availability of insects. क्यों? Because there would be waterlogging. In which season? Summer season. Snow melt किस season में हो? Summer season में, and that's why there will be waterlogging during summer season. और उस वजह से हमें यहाँ पे insects देखने को. Fine. So that is what are the features of tundra. Clear? Next now, species. Next point is species, और पहले will be referring to plants या producers. Let's refer to producers, and then we'll talk about consumers. Can you please tell me which type of producers are there in this particular area? Here we do not have presence of soil, right? And that's why I told you there are some species that can grow without soil. Which are they? Mosses and lichens. Mosses and lichens. Even you can refer to some grasses as well in this particular area. Some grasses as well. Okay. Even you can write examples of sedges. 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 Right? घर पे जाके ये नाम Google करने. Right? Whenever you revise, Google these names so that you will get a picture of these, let's say, plant species, these producers. Fine. So these are the producers. Consumers किस प्रकार के होंगे यहाँ पे? Norway lemmings, Arctic hare, caribou. Norway lemmings, Arctic hare, caribou, Arctic ground squirrels, Arctic ground squirrels, etc. Arctic ground squirrels, etc. ठीक है? So these are the consumers that we have in tundra. Fine. ठीक है? Google करने नाम so that you get the pictures of these animals as well. ठीक है? That is what is the first biome. And biome we will cover in this fashion only. Will be referring to their locations, conditions, then features, species like producers, consumers, and wherever soil is there, important soil is there, I'll refer to soil as well. Okay. So if you have any doubt in the discussion that we have had, please ask. So edaphic factors मतलब soil factors. Soil factors को ही हम edaphic factors कहते हैं, right? And if you are asking how soil affects biome, what is the prime characteristic of any biome? Vegetation. Vegetation कहाँ grow होता है? ठीक है? Yes, online students. Do hangul come in tundra? Hangul, see, it's not exactly in tundra. आप उसे तैगा में consider कर सकते हैं. Right? In taiga kind of conditions, we may have presence of hangul. ठीक है, Mizan, it's there in taiga. Anurag, I have given question today. You can write that question. Tomorrow I'll give another question. ठीक है. So Anurag, please वो याद करते जाइए, because today I have given question on cellulose. Tomorrow I'll give you some other question. Please make sure you remind me. Saima, let me ask these management people कि कैसे आपका online student का answer check करना है. I'm not sure कि online student का answer कैसे check करना है. Let me ask let's say management people, then I'll be able to convey it to you. It is alpine. Himalayas are alpine tundra, but not entire Himalayas are alpine tundra. ऐसा नहीं कि सारे locations alpine tundra में आ जाएंगे. जहाँ पे बहुत ज़्यादा let's say cold conditions होती है. In Himalayas also coldness has its range. So at the peaks of mountains we have cold conditions which are very similar to tundra, and that we call as alpine tundra. Not entire Himalayas are tundra. Mizan. Yes. Homeostatic, can you explain homeostatic diagram with that pyramid diagram? अच्छा वो see, Gaurav, in homeostasis what may happen, there might be increase, right, due to some, let's say due to some conditions, some strange conditions, there might be increase in any species population. किसी भी species की population की संख्या बढ़ जाएगी, right? So this ecosystem has its own mechanisms to make sure that the earlier equilibrium is restored, right? यहाँ पे मान लेते कि grasshoppers का number बढ़ गया, तो अगर grasshoppers का number बढ़ गया, they will not have enough food to eat, and that's why eventually those increased number of grasshoppers would die, and as they die, they will make sure that the earlier condition is restored. That is what is homeostasis. यहाँ पे ये condition restore होने में कोई external factor काम नहीं कर रहा है. It is the internal factors that are working to restore the equilibrium. फाइन, आई होप इट इज क्लियर. होम्योस्टेसिस एक ऐसा प्रोसेस है जहां पे इकोसिस्टम बेस्ड ऑन इट्स ओन प्रोसेसेस विल ट्राई टू मेंटेन इट्स इक्विलिब्रियम. ठीक है. इज देयर एनी पॉसिबिलिटी ऑफ ट्रीज ग्रोइंग? सी, बड़े ट्रीज नहीं देखने को मिलेंगे. यू कैन फाइंड ग्रासेस देयर. मिजान, we do not have possibility of trees, and that's why I want you to go to that area of Himalayas जहाँ पे trees नहीं. हिमालयाज में हर जगह पे ट्री नहीं है, ऐसा नहीं है. in tree means wherever in Himalayas we have presence of trees, that will not be tundra. Primary productivity मतलब क्या? Primary productivity means the rate at which biomass is getting produced by producers during the activity of photosynthesis. फोटोसिंथेसिस के दरमियान जो भी बायोमास प्रोड्यूस हो रहा है उसका रेट मतलब प्राइमरी प्रोडक्टिविटी. the rate at which biomass is getting produced by producers during photosynthesis is called as productivity. Anch. Taiga vegetation is which type of vegetation? Ate Ranjana, we will be discussing about taiga. We have not discussed about taiga. Right? So let's go slowly and steady. Ranjana. अच्छा, taiga is alpine or arctic? See, taiga is not categorized like alpine or arctic. ये जो अल्पाइन और आर्कटिक का क्लासिफिकेशन है दैट इज ट्रू फॉर टुंड्रा, नॉट फॉर taiga. ठीक है, taiga के लिए नहीं है वो क्लासिफिकेशन. इट इज ट्रू फॉर टुंड्रा, नॉट फॉर taiga. ठीक है, आई होप इट इज क्लियर. डन ऑनलाइन स्टूडेंट्स? एनी डाउट? Okay, thank you. Fine, thank you.